Good morning, Mike, Managing Directors and Global Partners. Here is your news brief for Thursday, June 18th, 2015. Just when you thought it was dead, it keeps coming back. No, we're not talking about the bad guy in the latest summer blockbuster. We're talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and Fast Track Authority, which is known officially as Trade Promotion Authority. Last week, the House of Representatives failed to grant President Obama Fast Track Authority that would allow easier passage of the Trans-Pacific Partnership when it comes up for a vote later this year. What was interesting about the vote last week was that it was the president's own party that blocked the legislation, while the majority of Republicans voted in favor of it. There is a popular saying that politics makes strange bedfellows, and this is certainly one case of that. Now Republican leaders in Congress are planning their next moves to save the Trans-Pacific Partnership for the president. Passage of the TPP has become the #1 priority of the president's second term, much like the Affordable Care Act was in his first term. This is why the TPP is now being called Obama Trade. The whole situation is reminiscent of the TARP program that created $700 billion in bailout funds for financial institutions when the financial crisis hit. Congress originally defeated it too, but the banks and the Treasury Department were able to get it passed on a second try. As we've been saying since the fast track issue came up, the crony capitalists that want to see the TPP passed must get fast track approved first so that they can keep its contents hidden from the general public. Otherwise, it will be much more difficult for it to make it into law. This is why the powers that be will keep hammering away at the members of Congress until fast track is achieved. In another example of history repeating itself, last week Representative Paul Ryan said that the TPP will be, quote, declassified and made public once it's agreed to, unquote, which brought immediate comparison to Nancy Pelosi's now famous statement that Congress had to pass the Affordable Care Act so that the American people can find out what is in it. Next, despite a slowing economy, China has overtaken Canada as the largest foreign buyer of U.S. real estate in both number of sales and dollar volume. The Chinese spent $28.6 billion on U.S. homes and accounted for 16% of all transactions by foreign buyers in the past 12 months, ending in March of this year. Canadians had held the top spot since 2008, but in the most recent period, they only purchased $11.2 billion, accounting for 14% of sales. The average home sale to a Chinese buyer is $831,000 compared to an average of $500,000 for all other international buyers. Indian buyers came in third at $7.9 billion, followed by Mexican buyers at $4.9 billion. The total number of closings fell 10% to 209,000, but the total amount spent jumped from $92.2 billion a year ago to $104 billion last year. Also of note is that 55% of all international buyers pay cash, while only 25% of domestic home purchases are concluded in cash. Next, ride-sharing service Uber suffered a legal defeat yesterday when the California Labor Commission ruled Uber drivers were employees and not independent contractors. If upheld, the decision exposes the company to Social Security, workers' compensation, and unemployment insurance costs that would threaten its entire business model. And it could also be used as a precedent in other states and severely damage consumers and Uber drivers by drastically reducing the number of cars available for hire. The only group that it benefits is the entrenched taxi industry. Uber currently has 200,000 drivers in the U.S. As a result of the decision, Uber has been ordered to pay one of its drivers more than $4,100 to cover mileage and tolls that were incurred over a 3-month period last year. And finally, the Treasury Department announced yesterday that the $10 bill will be redesigned to feature a woman on it beginning in 2020. The timing of the change will mark the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment that gave women the ability to vote. The selection process for the woman who will appear on the bill is now underway and could be decided by popular vote. The only requirement is that the person be deceased. A grassroots movement to replace Andrew Jackson's portrait on the $20 bill sprung up earlier this year, but the $10 bill was decided on because it was already scheduled to be redesigned anyway. Harriet Tubman is thought to be the early leading candidate. She was born a slave in the early 1820s, but later escaped and became an active participant in the Underground Railroad that worked to free other slaves. There are currently 2 billion $10 bills in circulation, which is about a quarter of the number of $20 bills in existence. And that's your news brief.